Good afternoon. King David wrote in the book of Psalms, chapter 90, verse 10. I'll say it in Hebrew. ימי שנותינו בהם 70 שנה, ואם בגבורות 80 שנה. The days of our years among them are 70 years, and if with might 80 years. Here we are, only 73 years after the end of the Second World War. A very short period of time. It is so short that it contains one's lifetime. We gathered here together to tell the darkest chapter of the Jewish history, to remember and never forget, and to say never again. I would like to exploit our local and own Remembrance March and share with you a story of a totally different march. A march of prisoners from one small labor camp. Daniel Jonah Goldhagen, in his monumental book, Ordinary Germans and the Holocaust, tells in details the story of Helmbrecht's camp. The inhabitants of this camp were Jewish prisoners who were forced to march a death march during the last weeks of the Nazi regime. Helmbrecht's camp was the labor camp for women only. The camp was located on the outskirts of a town called Hof in western Germany, 100 miles north of the notorious city of Nuremberg, the same Nuremberg that played an essential and evil part in modern history. In Nuremberg, the Germans took their first step of discriminating the Jews in what is known today the Nuremberg laws. These laws legalized the discrimination of all Jews throughout Europe. These same laws helped the Nazi regime to execute their satanic plan that began by shoving the Jews into small ghettos and eventually led the Third Reich to construct death camps and ultimately design those camps to serve as factories of death that enabled the Nazis to commit brutal mass murder of more than 6 million of my people. A third of the Jewish nation. So what exactly happened in this unknown Helmbrecht's labor camp? On the 13th of April, 1945, 73 years ago, almost on the day, less than 4 weeks before the end of the war, there were between 670 or 680 Jewish women from all ages that were prisoned and belonged to the camp. The name of the infamous commander of the camp was Elois Der. The camp was his private kingdom. He was looked like a god. He decided who will live and who will meet death. As the war was coming to its end, when the Red Army infiltrated Germany and the final defeat was days or weeks away, even then, and even though the commander there understood that his fate is doomed, he decided not to surrender, but rather to torture and kill as many of his Jewish prisoners. His decision was to evacuate the camp with the Jewish prisoners and flee by foot as far as possible from the preceding Russian army. There was no specific destination. His intention was to walk day in and day out and wear out the starving prisoners until they literally drop dead. As they passed through the gates of the camp, trembling, shivering, with only rags to their skinny, bony bodies, most of the prisoners had no shoes. Hungry and exhausted, they were forced out into the wilderness. The 54 guards that escorted them were all well dressed for the long, cold journey. They were fed well, and above all, they had weapons and clubs to teach these vulnerable women a lesson. During the endless march, the sick and weak Jewish women walked an average of 10 miles a day. They were dragged without food or water, in icy, freezing cold weather, with no time to rest. During the march, they passed villages, towns, and major cities. No one, not even one, of the 10,000s of the bystanders throughout the trail of the march helped or even encouraged them. They were all by themselves. They felt defenseless. It was them, a small and petty group, against their entire world. 22 long days. More than 3 whole weeks lasted their death march. During those days, they walked 197 miles. 670 women started the fatiguing march, and only 395 made it to the end. 275 of the miserable prisoners were murdered or died of exhaustion during the 22 days. 41% of the Jewish women prisoners who started the march perished during only 3 weeks. These numbers are almost beyond understanding. This high percentage of death in such a short period of time was way more than any rate of death in any death camp known. More than Auschwitz, Bergen-Belsen, Treblinka, or any other death camp. So here we are, marching today in the floral street of Houston, marching only a few hundred feet, together, united, remembering the 6 million Jews that were butchered to death only because they were Jews. As the proud official representative of the State of Israel, the state of the Jewish people, I promise to my beloved holy brothers and sisters that we will never forget them. I vow to you all that their memory will always guide us. And I swear to you, in the name of the State of Israel, Am Yisrael Chai V'Kayam. The people of Israel are alive and will live for eternity. Thank you to you all.